How to make AI products with Ruby. 大崎陽 from Retriever. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Yo Osaki. And at Retriever, I'm working as an engineering manager, and I'm involved in the development of Yoshina, that is analysis AI. And as a community activities at Ruby, I have given presentations at Ruby Kaigi. And from Ruby to Java, compile has been presented, and this has been my main activities. Now I would like to introduce Retriever. Using the AI technology, we would use the forest of the words and make contribution to the improvement of the productivity of the corporations. These are the major part of the business activities. The forest of the words, that is abundant the text data, will be analyzed to search for the valuable information to improve the productivity of the private companies, and natural language processing and the machine learning are applied for this technically and making various products. This is a list of the products by Retriever, which are looking at it. The Seru, the search platform, and using the multiple combination of the different search platform is possible, and then applying this search technology, answer finder, that is for the FAQ search, and using the machine learning for the classification of the documents, we have the product called the predictor, and then for the voice, the recognition by voice recognizer. And today I would like to talk about the product called Yoshina, that is for the analysis using AI. In addition to these products, we do have many more products, but I would like to focus upon those products related to today's talk. Now, how to use Ruby in the products produced by Retriever. This is a FAQ, the search called Answer Finder, and using the Retriever search technology. Based upon the use case of the users, a solution is given to the users. More specifically, it is used for the call center, for instance, and the response to the frequently asked questions is searched. And in the backend server, obviously we have schedule, another Retriever products is used. Therefore, as an existing product, we have already functions, but these are used for new solution. And depending upon the users, the use case, we use Ruby on Rails to user interface and the functions are provided depending upon the user's needs. The next, the configuration is very similar as the previous one, but we don't have any existing the product like Rails, and this has been made from the scratch. This is called the predictor, and the product is for the classification of the documents. And using the algorithm of the machine learning, this product is made. For instance, it is quite cumbersome and time-consuming, and therefore C++ is implemented for the priority of the velocity and the speed, and for the user interface. uh, those without any the priority on speed, but they're easy to develop. Uh, the Rails is used as a front-end server. And so we separated between the speed and the easiness of the development. Therefore, C++ for velocity and easiness to develop for the Ruby Rails and to improve the productivity. That's why we use Ruby. Next is the example of another product, which is today's topic, that is Yoshina. In the backend, the sophisticated analysis processing is done with a C++ with a priority on the speed, and the predictor is used in backend for the classification of the document. Therefore, we use both configurations. In addition, the part on the Ruby, and the Ruby can perform some of the analysis processing that is done by Ruby, and I will talk about this later. So I use Ruby in combination with other systems, so we can take advantage of the Ruby. And for the part which would have the requirement of the speed, we can combine with other system. So how to cooperate or how to connect with other systems? Basically, we use a HTTP API, or it is also possible to use a command line interface. And the advantage of using this is that system target can be utilized by command lines. In addition, as an interface, command can be called in a manner, a simple manner, and these are the advantages of using command line interface. But in this case, the complicated collaboration is not possible. Therefore, as an alternative, it is also possible to use binding. In our system, we don't use the binding, but when the more complicated the collaboration is needed, I am thinking of using possibly binding as well. Now, I would like to explain Yoshina. Yoshina, analysis AI, you take up valuable data from the abundant data. Uh, this is done by AI. For instance, user present a lot of voices and opinions, and products and the service can be improved and can be done in a different manner. This is a feature of Yoshina, very easy to use. Data is registered, and then automatically AI analyze the data, and then the result of the analysis will be interpreted by people, the human, and then mining the data and the further analysis is provided. This is also automatically done by AI and then cycle back to the human interpretation. So the restoration of the data analysis and the interpretation by humans. And these are three simple steps that will enable this. And that is an important feature of a Yoshina. So, how Yoshina analyze the data, how human would interpret, this is the next part I'd like to talk about. This is the Yoshina, the sectioning by different topics. And sectioning is that we use a topic model is used for this purpose. So this is not the teacher-based analysis. Therefore, we don't have to create the teachers. Therefore, automatically the machine can section the data. by different topics. And then this is separated automatically. Therefore, the content is not known. For the interpretation, we use a frequent word or popular word. These are the keywords with characteristics and features to identify what the data is talking about. And this is for the interpretation later by humans. And the sectioning of the topic model uses machine learning. Therefore, this is a high-level analysis. In order to speed up the implementations, we use a C++. And for frequent and popular words, this can be done with a simple statistical processing. Therefore, this part is implemented with a Ruby. So amongst algorithm, the speed is done by C++. If not, if it's simple, uh, the task which can be done by Ruby, we select to use the Ruby. So the frequent and popular words implemented by Ruby. This is based upon the TF-IDF basis and just give scores to each word. TF-IDF will not be explained at this moment in detail, but this is frequently used a method in the natural language processing and a very simple method of statistics. Now, TF-IDF itself is simple, but the frequent word, popular word that we use is a unique one, and we have a unique algorithm, and using the word scoring based upon the TF-IDF. So based upon the result of the classification of the other documents, we give a score based upon the information of the labels. It's based upon the temporal algorithm, but although it is very simple, but quite a unique tuning is provided, need to be provided, which does not exist in the current library. We don't use existing library, therefore in the details we have the fine tuning of the performance, and we have to provide the various the sophisticated the approaches. In the case of the machine learning and natural language processing, people tend to use Python, but the Ruby is better uh, when the library is very abundant in the machine learning and natural language processing. Therefore, we don't use existing library for this, and therefore the Python is not that advantageous, and better to use Ruby on Rails for the implementation rather than Python. Therefore, Ruby is used for easier implementation, and that is our advantage. So why Ruby? Uh, this is the response. In order to have the valuable the result, we cannot perform this with just a combination of existing libraries and time-consuming processes like machine learning and morphological analysis will be done by C++. And therefore, we use another system for time-consuming processes. So Ruby on Rails, the machine learning, and natural language processing, we have to establish a system in as an entire system. That is very important. I'd like to move on to the part of the valuable products which is delivered to our user. I'd like to give you some case examples.
So the first example is the city of Nagoya. Well, Nagoya City has call center to receive inquiries from the citizens, and those inquiries received at call center are put into the text and accumulated as data. However, that data are not really utilized to improve the city's service. So that was the issue for Nagoya City. And those inquiry data has to be reviewed. However, there are as many as 50,000 data per year. So it's quite challenging for the staff of the city government to go through this one by one. And that is why they thought about Yoshina. So as POC, we analyzed the inquiry data of Nagoya City. So as explained earlier, to analyze with Yoshina, first we have AI processing to group based upon the similarity. So that's the topic model. So finding the similar topic, finding some affinity for grouping the data, and then give a name to the group. And that is based upon frequently mentioned words and popular words, so that the human beings or the human can see what kind of topics at a glance. And then, say, senior citizens pass or legal consultations. So these are topics. And then we quantify based upon the number of the data and report the results. And furthermore, as for the senior citizens pass, we can offer deeper analysis and then the renewal of the senior citizens pass. And then you can see deeper and deeper analysis. And at the end, for example, so my pass is already expired. Can I still renew it? And also, what about the cost for renewing the senior citizens pass? So you can see these are frequently asked questions as a result. And next is examples of the government's preparation office for the digital agency. And this site is called the Digital Reform Idea Box. The government office invited the ideas from the citizens. And we were told that they received 1,400 ideas altogether, and they wanted to classify those ideas so they could analyze them deeper. And here, the deeper analysis is given to citizens' ID cards and finding some ideas for further review. So this part is done by the human staff, but organizing idea easy to understand manner in this table provided the easier reviewing process. Another example, Kobe City. Urban Innovation Kobe plus P was a field project of Kobe. We also participated in this project. So far, I introduced the examples of the public agencies, but we also have cases of the private companies as well. And this is the example of Aioi Nisei Dowa Insurance Company. This case was about introduction of Yoshina to call center. They receive 1 million data at a call center every year. They try to use this data to improve their quality of service. So to create those AI products, how do we produce AI product? What do we care? What we think is important is to provide the values from users' perspective. When people hear the word AI, some people think it's a little bit skeptical. Does it really work? Is it really useful? Well, we understand many people feel in that way, but we also have the passion that we like to provide the valuable products to the users. So that's the mindset we have in production process. But AI products use machine learning, and as a result, we see the result which is not very precise or not the expected results. So this kind of uncertainty is the challenge, unique challenge we have to deal with. But those challenges are not really limited to AI products. Perhaps the common challenges for any type of the product. But for these, provision of the true value to the user and dealing with uncertainty are particularly important for AI products. So I'd like to talk about these concepts a little bit more. So how do we work? We have Scrum process. The Scrum team is established. As you see here, in the Scrum team, we also have product and users. So in a Scrum team, we have development team, designers, and also POC team, and PO or product owner. So what we do first is to perform POC. As mentioned earlier, what's really important is to provide the value from user's perspective. So we have to test what we are going to do is really valuable from user's perspective. So in a POC, we make sure to include the users. So POC team, product owner, and the user will conduct POC. By conducting POC, we can confirm what we are going to do are really valuable for users, and then development team will develop products and give the feedback to the products. So we test the idea with POC and gives the feedback to the products. So what we produce here are frequently mentioned words and popular words, as mentioned earlier. And also product owner would like to create easy-to-use interface. So product owner would suggest this is how the product should be produced, and then designer, listening to that, would do the designing, and then it would be fed back to the development team. So in our Scrum team, these 4 teams work together as one team. So Scrum has weekly activity called sprint. It's like a weekly activity keep rotating on a weekly basis, and also in 1 week loop we have daily stand-up meeting. But because of the COVID-19, we have a seated meeting remotely, but still we have the meeting every day. So in this daily meeting, we discuss specifications, and also some may say, well, although initial specifications were like this, but maybe it should be changed in this way. And also POC team may suggest, we found such results in a POC, and this is a value we like to deliver to the users. And also designer may share their intention. So every day we share the idea and have discussion in a daily stand-up meeting. Rotating or quick feedback mechanism is very important to deal with uncertainty. While more uncertain it is, the quicker feedback is necessary. So we can reduce or minimize uncertainty. So weekly sprint review is performed, And the feedback from this review is used to improve the product, reviewed by designers and product team, and more discussions are made. So that's a cycle. And the cycle has to be rotated quickly. That's very important. Lastly, I'd like to talk about Japanese language and Ruby. On the right-hand side, you see the cartoon or drawing. That's my work. So, 猫と死んだと日本語と Ruby is the title of the book, Dojinshi, privately published on the web. So you can buy this by visiting booths if you're interested. So our product is about NLP, or natural language processing, and machine learning, ML. We developed the software. But as mentioned earlier, in these fields, Python seems to be a bit more advantageous. That is because of their track record. They have more library accumulated and ecosystem. And also, there are many researchers and also developers. So as a result, the Python seems to be stronger in this field. And however, that observation is the situation overseas. And of course, in Japan, Japan too, Python is popular. But as far as the natural language NLP for the Japanese language, the Python superiority may not be that great. For example, for NLP product, uniquely for the Japanese language, the morphological analysis, most well used popular product is called Mekabu. Mekabu was it's implemented with C++ and has binding for each language. So for the Japanese language, Python or Ruby, which has an advantage. So I mentioned that the Python superiority or advantage is supported by the large number of researchers. But what about the Japanese language? The Ruby was initially developed in Japan by the Japanese developer. Therefore, as for the functionality, they have some unique functionalities for the Japanese language, such as internal encodings. It allows various encodings. That may be advantage. And also, there are many Japanese developers. So dealing with the Japanese language in Ruby, again, the large number of developers, the Japanese developers may be advantage as well. So as for NLP and ML in general, the Pythons may be more popular. But when it comes to the Japanese language, the Ruby may have unique advantage. So that's something I'd like to explore a little bit more in the future. So I introduced Yoshina, an AI product made with Ruby. I explained how we develop our AI products and our focus in the development process. I also talked about how we use Ruby for AI product, Ruby and natural language processing for the Japanese language. That's all for my presentation. Thank you very much.